everybody, and thank you so much for tuning into today's episode. I can't believe that I started a YouTube channel. So I'm super excited to be here with you guys today because I really just came up with the idea to start a YouTube channel literally last week while I was on a run with my husband, and I came up with this exact topic. So I hope that it is valuable for you guys, and I hope that you enjoy it. The name of today's episode is called Lean In, and it's about pushing through tough circumstances. So, like I said, I came up with this idea for this episode when I was running with my husband. Here in Atlanta, there's a ton of different hills. So, we were running up a hill, inevitably, and I was just thinking to myself, Anisa, you really have to get through this hill. You've got to get through this hill. And I told myself, you have to lean in. And I thought to myself, where did I come up with that? And I remembered that I had been told the same thing when I used to run. I used to run the 400. And in the 400, on the back stretch of the 400, my coach would tell me to lean in as if I was running up a hill. And that analogy at the time didn't make sense because I didn't run outside of running on a track, right? But I started to think, why would leaning into the hill make it easier for me to get up the hill? And I came up with a few things, and I think that these things are really applicable to what happens when you are going through an uphill battle in life, or you're going through adversity, or you're going through something tough, and you just lean into it. And so before I get into the three things, I want to just be very clear that in order to lean into your circumstances, the first thing that you have to do is accept them. And I know a lot of times acceptance can be a big issue for us. So a lot of times we want to resist where we're at, and we can spend so much time and effort resisting where we're at that we aren't really going anywhere, and we're spending more energy resisting than actually moving ourselves forward. So I'm going to talk about three different things that you get out of leaning into your circumstance. And the first one is leverage. So what happens when you get leverage? Leverage is when you are able to put less force into something, but you get a greater output. And so again, like I said, in order to, in life, when you are leaning into something, in order to get leverage, you really have to accept things first. And so I'm going to tell a little story about when I was younger. I'm the youngest of 4 kids, and so we were fortunate enough to have our own rooms. But me being the youngest, I kind of always wanted to hang out with my sister, right? Obviously. And so I would try to go into her room, and she, being the older sister, obviously didn't want me to be in her room. So she would kick me out and close the door. And so I would always lean up against the door to try to open it. So I'd be pushing this door open. And every time I noticed that as I leaned in a little bit deeper, that I could push the door open maybe a little bit farther. I got greater force out of my output, right? And so I believe the same is true when we are in tough circumstances. So when we're in tough circumstances and we are able to lean in by accepting what we're in, by accepting where we're at, we can get a greater output for the small things that we do, whether that's getting up and making your bed, or doing something really small. Maybe you made breakfast, or maybe you, swept your kitchen floor. Just something that's really small and trivial in an everyday situation, but when you're really going through a tough time, it can really go a long way just to do something that small. You're gonna get a greater output for those small things when you're leaning into your circumstances. And on the contrary, if you allow those small things to fall to the wayside, they're gonna build up against you, if that makes sense. They're gonna build up over time to really just kind of take over, and you're gonna feel like you're out of control. So I found that doing small things in the midst of chaos, small things like making my bed or washing the dishes, or something that's very trivial and very monotonous, if that makes sense, can really go a long way in making me feel like I have control. So that's kind of what I wanted to talk about when it comes to leverage. And then the second thing is, when you lean into your circumstances by first accepting them, then you can build your endurance. And so when I say build your endurance, what I really mean is that you are prepared and you're stronger for the next time that adversity comes about. So I like to think about if you've ever played sports, and maybe you played a really tough opponent and maybe they were on your schedule twice that year, right? And so the first time you see them, you've prepared as much as you can, you've watched the film, you have a strategy, but maybe there were some things that came out that you weren't necessarily prepared for. But then later in the season, you get to see them again, right? And when you get to see them again, you are able to not only take the original strategy that you had, but also take the learnings that you had from that first game that you played them, and you are able to build a better strategy. And throughout that whole time, you can train, you can work with your teammates to get better, and there's all these different things that can happen after going through the first game, right? And so when you take that analogy and you put it up against circumstances, or you put it up against going through an obstacle or a difficult season, it's really important to understand this, that you cannot win, you cannot beat a team that you refuse to play. And the same goes for adversity. You cannot overcome adversity if you refuse to engage with adversity. And so that's really what this is all about, leaning in. It's really about engaging with your circumstances and accepting them and just doing the small things to get through. And so that leads me to my next point. When you do the small things to get through and you really just kind of stay on top of your stuff, and then you prepare your mind to be better the next time, then that is all of those things are giving you momentum to hit the ground running once that obstacle is removed. So I'm going to take you back to me pushing up against the door, trying to get into my sister's room. Every now and then my sister would move out of the way, right? So I'm leaning up against this door, she's pushing up against it as well, and every now and then she moves out of the way. And so what happens when she moves out of the way? Obviously I run into the room. Sometimes I fell over, but I would run into this room. And the same is true when we're leaning into our circumstances, or we're leaning into an obstacle in life. Once that obstacle is removed, we have momentum to run forward towards wherever it is that we want to be. So it's really important not to let obstacles bring you to a standstill, and to do those small things on the daily, and to build up your mental so that you can, have a good strategy for when tough times happen again. It's really important to do that, to not get stagnant, because if you get stagnant when an obstacle is in front of you, then once that obstacle is removed, you aren't going to be ready to move. And so that's really the point. Those are the 3 things that I really had for you guys. I hope that they make sense. I hope that they're valuable for you. And if you want to go deeper into this topic, I left a little download in the description box below. For you guys, it's really just a more holistic look at pushing through tough circumstances. It's designed to go over 3 days, and I go over 3 principles of pushing through tough circumstances, and that is patience, hope, and perseverance. So I really hope that this was valuable for you guys. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel. And until next time, I appreciate you so much, and I love you big. Be well.